Have you ever wondered if an inexpensive super zoom lens like this Tamron 28-200 can compete with this very expensive Sony 70-200 GM Mark II 2.8 zoom lens? Well, I did, and that is exactly what I decided to do, was to compare these two lenses, even though this Tamron has no business whatsoever actually going up against this lens, because the cost difference between the two is significant. I got this one on sale, this Tamron on sale for $650, and I think this is $2,800, $2,700, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on that, but anyways, it's a very expensive lens compared to this one. In this video, again, we're going to compare these two head-to-head in both video and in stills. I'll leave some timestamps down below so that you can bounce around should you choose to do so. A couple quick disclaimers is I bought both of these lenses with my own money, so I'm not biased in any way, shape, or form. And in addition to that, everything was filmed on an A7R5 with full resolution of 61 megapixels for stills, and in video mode, it's at 4K 30p. So if you are interested in seeing these two lenses compared side by side, stick around, let's get into it. Okay, so that was a quick comparison of the video between the two lenses, and honestly, the image quality itself in video anyways is pretty similar. You can definitely see a difference in the depth of field between 2.8 and 5.6. However, if you stop down that 70-200 to 5.6, the images are very, very similar. Where you do notice a difference in video is in stabilization. So the Sony GM lens with the OSS built in combination with the A7R5's IBIS, I think provides a tremendous advantage compared to third-party options like Tamron and Sigma. And you can see that especially at some of the longer focal lengths like 200 millimeters. So now let's jump into the stills portion and see if we can see the difference between these two lenses a little bit easier. All right, so I've got on the left-hand side, I've got the GM lens, and on the right-hand side, I've got the Tamron. This is just a picture of that blue heron that I saw, and you can see here there's plenty of detail in both of these shots, and they both look really, really good. Now, where you do see the difference, again, on the left-hand side here is the GM lens, is you can see it in the background blur, the bokeh, right? It's a little bit smoother. Actually, it's a lot smoother than this lens, the Tamron lens, but that has to do with the aperture. So it's f2.8 versus f5.6. And I shot both of these at 1/250th of a second. And you can see it's almost exactly 2 stops difference in ISO 160 versus 800, which is exactly what you would expect for these two lenses. All right, let's look at the next two here. All right, just another shot of that same bird. Okay, so again, very minute differences between these two. I'm looking at it in full resolution on my computer. Who knows what YouTube is doing with the compression on this, but you can see here on the beak, there's a lot more detail on the 70-200 versus the Tamron. That may have just misfocused just a little bit. I think I didn't have the bird autofocus on, but you can see plenty of detail in the feathers. It is nicer on the Sony, but the Tamron, I mean, I'm not going to split hairs here. Both of these images look really good. All right, let's look at the next one here. Okay, so this is, I think, a good example of where the real difference is between f2.8 and f5.6. On the right-hand side, you can see the background here is really nicely blurred with the 2.8 lens. On the right-hand side, now I have the GM. On the left-hand side, I've got the Tamron. Still not bad on the Tamron by any stretch. In fact, if you saw both of these images independently, you'd probably look at them and think like, wow, both of these images are good images. Maybe not the composition or anything, but the colors and the contrast and all that stuff is very good for both lenses. The difference, of course, is when you compare them side by side, the 2.8 really does make a difference in this photo. All right, let's look at the next one. All right, and this is the lonely green chair that has been thrown into the Charles River. And you can see here, again, not a huge difference between these two. Let me get them lined up here as best I can. Not a huge difference. And I'm just doing 1:1, so 100% resolution. And I can't even remember what resolution I shot these at. I don't know if it's a 61 megapixel sensor. Let me just take a look here real quick. All right, so this is the maximum resolution. This is at the large raw setting. And I did not process these photos at all. They are completely still in the raw format within Sony. I didn't want to, add color contrast, all that stuff. I just want to see what the raw images would do. So you'll notice here that the difference, again, I've got the Sony on the right-hand side, the Tamron on the left-hand side. The shutter speed is 2 stops faster, right? 1/1600th of a second versus 1/400th. And I kept them at ISO 100 just so there wouldn't be any noise in the image. But you see it is capturing more of that action, if you will. And that's the benefit of a 2.8 lens, is that you can shoot at a faster shutter speed while maintaining good ISO performance and less noise in your image. Now, one thing here to note is, the real ace in the hole here for the Tamron is that you can then zoom out. So this is just a 28 millimeter picture that I took just to show how far away that chair was, that was thrown in. And you can see the difference. That is absolutely the biggest advantage for the Tamron lens versus the Sony lens, is that ability to zoom out to 28 millimeters, which is significantly wider than 70 millimeters, which is what you can get with the Sony lens. All right, let's keep going here. Composition here, I screwed up a little bit. I didn't take one. I was down at kind of the ground level here when I took it with the Sony lens, and the Tamron's over here. But, the point is you can zoom in and you can see there are some subtle differences here. You can see, a little bit more detail in the eye area. So there's more detail in the shadows for the Sony as opposed to the Tamron, but Again, I'm really splitting hairs here. And the nice thing is this Tamron, you can see on the beak here, this is where you would traditionally see like some purple fringing, and you're not seeing that. If there is some there, it's very well controlled, and it's really not noticeable at all. And it's very easy to correct in the event that you need to do that. So lovely detail here in the feathers. It just looks great. It really does. Again, you do notice the difference in the background blur here with the 2.8 being much smoother and creamier as opposed to the Tamron at 5.6. And then lastly, let's look at some leaves. So again, this is just another one that I shot on the right-hand side is the Sony at 2.8, and on the left is the Tamron at 5.6. And you can see in the background here, it is smoother with the Sony lens, but I mean, again, we're just really splitting hairs here with the image quality. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, the image quality, let me know down in the comments. Could you see a big difference between the two lenses? I think in certain instances you can, in other instances you can. If it's really subject isolation that you're after and you need that 2.8 aperture, then it makes sense. But most people are not going to be able to tell the difference between a 2.8 and a 5.6 aperture when just taking just a regular picture. So I don't know. Let me know down in the comments what you think. All right, so that wraps up the comparison between the Tamron 28-200 and the Sony GM70-200 f2.8 GM2, I should say. What do you think of these two lenses? I mean, is the 28-200 good enough? Upon reviewing this footage and the stills images, it really is an excellent lens, that 28-200, for the price that you're paying. I mean, $650 to get this type of performance out of that lens is incredible. It really is. So anyways, let me know down in the comments, do you think the 28-200 held up good enough versus the 70-200 GM Mark II, or do you think it fell short? My personal opinion is I think it performed really well, especially given the price point. But, I may see things differently and you may have a different opinion. So let me know down in the comments below. Anyways, if you did enjoy this video, maybe hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be covering a lot more of content like this moving forward. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Take care.